A reporter from WRC-TV was asking questions about Martin Luther King's birthday and the progress blacks have made in society. There, CBS sports commentator Jimmy the Greek Snyder gave his impressions of blacks in coaching in the National Football League. His answers could raise as much controversy as the statements by former Dodgers executive Al Campanis last April on ABC's Nightline news program.
Yeah, pretty soon they're going to have to equalize it for the blacks, for the Greeks, the Jews, and for everybody. I mean, let's make it equal for everybody, you know.
And is it equal? What about in sports?
Well, they've got everything. If they take over coaching like everybody wants them to, there's not going to be anything left for the white people. I mean, all the players are black. I mean, the only thing that the whites control is the coaching jobs. Now, I'm not being derogatory about it, but that's all that's left for them. The black talent is beautiful. It's great. It's out there.
Yeah.
So the only thing left for the whites is a couple coaching jobs.
Yeah, maybe we need to get more black coaches, don't you?
Oh, it's all right with me.
Okay, well,
I'm sure that they'll take over that pretty soon, too.
Oh, I'm sure they'll take over that too. Good everything. Hi. Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Carr. America's the people's professor.
Oh Lord, don't. Hey, yeah. That's kind of cute. I like that. I saw people at the Union Station yesterday. Told me tell you hello. Some of them are going to be in South Carolina. It is so random that
it's random
people, but it's not random because we are the people together in the nation's capital's train station. But it was us down there. So yeah, the people.
We know who the people are.
Who the people are. Who was that?
That was Jimmy the Greek Snyder. I was reminded of that, and I remember when this happened. I was actually a sports writer at the New York Daily News. This was January 16, 1988. And actually, I didn't start there until September, so that's not true. I was a sports writer at the Star Ledger at the time.
Newark Star Ledger.
Yeah.
Flagship institution.
Yeah. So, and I remember feeling bad because he lost his job, right? So it was a Martin Luther King holiday. The man was out having lunch, minding his happy Greek business.
How about
and somebody hey, what about black equality? Stick a mic in your face. You might have had a couple of drinks. You definitely had some hors d'oeuvres or two.
Thought you were talking to friends, white friends.
Minding your business.
What'd you
think about black progress?
Come on, Demetrios. What Demetrios messed up, huh?
Did he though? Or did he say the quiet part out loud? Because he went on to talk about the high thigh bone and the breeding of the African.
Right.
Remember that? I'm not playing all of that, but
no, that's right. It makes us better, right?
Well, because we were bred, and so of course they're faster and better. And I was saying, this is how the conversations are had, isn't it? So the only thing white people have is coaching. So if they take that away, what will we have?
He was wrong about that, but I mean, that's cool.
Was he wrong? You just muted. Was he wrong about the coaching? Okay. All right. You're muted. I don't know why you're muted, but let me try to unmute you. I can't do it. You can only unmute you from you.
My bad.
There we go.
Wrong tab.
Yeah.
He was wrong. I mean, he working class white.
So what was he wrong about?
The man, Demetrios Theodinos. He done changed his name, and Snyder and Jimmy the Greek. He's a reporter. He's working class. He needs his paycheck every 2 weeks. I mean, they have the players, they have the coaches. Do they have the institutions? How much money University of Colorado has made over the last year? So he's wrong. But I mean, I understand he's responding like a working class white. I mean,
right, because for most of us, we see the players and the coaches.
Right, and we think that's black.
That's the game.
If I had a penny, Professor Hunter, for every young person I've encountered over the last 20 years or so who thought because they see all the black players at the University of North Carolina or Duke that it was a black school, I would be rich. When I was at Temple, the white students often commuted, and the black students, for protection and camaraderie, would convene. And for many times, you could come to Temple in the middle of the day over there on North Broad Street and go into the student center, and you think Temple was a HBCU, but it is not. So, as Gerald Horne said, poor whites, he said, Gerald likes to say in one way or the other, and this is like whiteness study stuff, David Rodiger, so many others. Whiteness is the battle pay that rich whites gave poor whites to defend the rich whites without knowing they were defending the rich whites. Jimmy the Greek talking like somebody who got his battle pay. His battle pay is whiteness. I don't own anything. I don't own a newspaper. I don't own the stadium. But damn it, I feel a sense of pride when I see white men commanding black men. So I love that the Lakers won all them championships. Jerry Buss owned the Lakers, and Pat Riley commanded those black men. Who called him the greatest leader of black men? I forget. One comedian.
All right, okay.
Anyway, but you know, now you try to own something. Magic Johnson traded in all his Starbucks, and then they give him half of 1%. You know, the Jay-Z move with the Nets, and it's like black owner. No, he don't own the Washington Commanders, but they're gonna sure bring his black behind out to the press conference because he wants these DC Negroes to come to the game. Anyway, but we'll get into that because we're gonna talk about our friend Coach Sanders, the great victory. He had an undefeated season so far.
Well, my DVR is set for noon. I'm watching the Nebraska game, something I have never done. I've never really been into college football. So I'm gonna watch because I'm very intrigued now. I'm leaning in, Dr. Carr.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people leaning in. I'm not mad. I think the Big 12, Colorado joined, starting in 2024, they're gonna get $31.8 billion from the Big 12. So I'm sure everybody, they want you to watch because they got to pay this money to Colorado. $31.8 billion.
Stop stealing my joy. Stop stealing my joy.
Keep your joy. Keep your joy. Keep your joy. That's why they hired Deion Sanders. People acting like they hired Deion Sanders to do something other than what he's doing. Negro's been entertaining people since the plantation. The key was to break his behind, get him out of Jackson State. Mission accomplished. They want this. You know this kind of thing, Sam.
See, I came in thinking we were gonna have this very lovely and inspiring conversation, uplifting Deion Sanders and being like rah-rah. And then
I'm lifting him up. I love it. I love entertainers.
So how should we be? Golly. You know what? Let me just say this. And this happens all the time. Like when you find out there's no Santa Claus, you know, there's a moment of like, I've been lied to. And I want to hold on to the myth of the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus because it makes me feel good, Dr. Carr.
Yeah.
Are you sitting here telling me there's no Tooth Fairy? I'm sorry if there are children watching, and that there's no Santa Claus. And
the Tooth Fairy, it's just the Tooth Fairy has a name, mom and dad, or uncle or auntie.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, the thing that I might want to lean into and have some joy around, I have to examine through this lens, and I have to, if I want to be truthful with myself. Whoa. And then ask my responsibility for perpetuating this system. Do we break the system? How do we break the system? Do we create another system? Is it even? I look at Saudi Arabia coming in. They done took over golf. They're inching up on soccer, global football, FUTBOL.
Come on.
There's some noise about them starting a shadow NBA league. I saw a story where LeBron was like, when they do it, I'm gone. Because, you know, they're going to give him like $1 billion to play.
No question.
What the hell? Who are we aligned with?
Who's we?
Exactly. Well, when I'm talking about we, I'm talking about, hey, good morning, Nubians and everybody.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Hi, good everything, y'all. Love y'all.
I love all y'all. Yeah. But look, we should get our joy from wherever we can find it. I mean, we're born, we're dying. In between, as ancient Egyptians would say, one of the purposes of life is to enjoy your life. So we should have joy. Look, I enjoy Deion Sanders. I enjoy him. I think, you know, I don't see what he's doing now as any different because it's not from when he was sidestepping down the sideline for the Atlanta Falcons or the Dallas Cowboys. I think did the NFL season start this?
I don't know. I'm not. You know, I'm not watching.
Well, see that.
So damn. Am I conflicted now? Like,
I mean, it's all professional sports entertainment football, right? Colorado, Nebraska, Dallas, Atlanta. It's all the same thing.
I made a conscious decision after Colin Kaepernick and then the lie of the Rooney Rule that I was no longer going to support the NFL, even though I absolutely is one of my favorite. I love playing fantasy football.
Mm-hmm.
I loved all of it. I love, you know, tailgating and all of it, showing up to Jets games and stuff. But I was like, I have to make a stand. So I drew a line in the sand. I'm not even watching your halftime. I don't care how many black people you could bring Aretha Franklin back from the grave. I'm not watching.
No, that's right. And
So
she's coming in the hologram.
she probably will be in the next one.
Working on it. Yeah, she be singing at some point, and they ain't got to pay her. This is the beautiful thing.
Yeah, you can
You know,
bring Whitney.
when you see her with that pocketbook in the crook of her arm, like I did when it was a wolf trap, that she got her money in there. They paid her in cash. Now that she gone, they could just make the hologram. They ain't even got to pay her.
So I made a conscious decision to not watch the NFL, but I almost got suckered in with the you know, that HBO thing that they have because Aaron Rodgers is now with the Jets. You know how they have behind the scenes. Oh my gosh, I can't think of the name of it, but you know they have this like
what's it?
You know what the name? Somebody knows it.
Hard
Knocks. Hard Knocks. Thank you. Hard Knocks. So I almost got sucked in because I watched the first episode and I was like, "Ooh, the Jets season is gonna be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I want to watch it." And I was like, "Nope. Don't be strong. Shut this TV off. The devil's trying to get you." So I stopped. Right. But I feel like this college football is a gateway drug. I feel like if I get caught up, I'm going.
You be dropping T-shirt quotables. In other words, you can open that should be on a shirt. College football gateway drug. I'm sorry, plantation college football, white college football. And make no mistake, it is white. I don't care what happens today when the Colorado band comes out and does some rough approximation of here I go. Now you talk about minstrelsy. If that band comes out today with some here I go, and Negroes get mad, why y'all mad? You love that man. Mammy, how I love you, how I love you. I walk a million miles for one of your smiles. Give me my theme music. Here I go. I wonder, maybe they paid juvenile. I don't know, Professor Hunter. It's all minstrelsy. We live in the United States of minstrelsy, and we're a bunch of minstrels. As long as we stay in that social structure, though. What?
Okay, I promise to leave, but I can't. You keep bringing me back.
I want you to come. Where you going?
I just want you to do your thing.
No, they got him out of Jackson State. That man had to go. You about to mess around and mess with our money. They tried the year before. They said, look, somebody got to go in here and get this man out of here. Look, Professor Hunter, this is one of your many areas of expertise. Could you please, I know you did it earlier in the week, but now, could you enlighten us on how these two boys, the quarterback and the wide receiver defensive back, who played with the same 10 toes and 10 fingers and legs and arms last year. And I was in Atlanta when South Carolina State stopped them boys. But somehow, when them Negroes did what they couldn't do in the SWAC in the Big 12, all of a sudden these writers discovered they had skipped. Could you help me understand that? Unless they're performing better now than they were last year.
No, I mean, Shador said, I couldn't do this last year. Breaking 500, I haven't done this anywhere. I mean, Shador said that after the game, right? Like he alluded to it. Okay. And I also, you know, I was talking about this a little bit last week, you know, when I was actually speaking with my students yesterday about it. You know, the reason why I chose to go into sports is because there were no women at the time and a handful of Black people. So when I landed at the Daily News, Rob Parker was there, Brian Burwell, rest in peace, and me. I was the only Black woman on the staff, every place that I was. And I realized in that moment that where there are few of us, you can rise, you know, quickly. You know, a lot of reporters. I wanted to be a reporter, but I looked over and I said, too many Black people over there. I'm going to have to battle. Let me come over here. And I was right. Stephen A. came about 3-4 years after I left sports and sat in my literal seat at the Daily News. But I think about fast forward, I have people speak at my class. One of them is Ebenezer Samuel, who covered the Giants for a period of time at the Daily News. Leon Carter, shout out to him, was a sports editor, Black man. And he talked to my class about being an Asian who lifts weights and loves Nikes of a certain age, having an advantage in that locker room. And he and Odell Beckham became close, and other players he had, you know, who were friendly with him. They would talk to him, the players, and not talk to the 40, 50-year-old white men. And it was a bane of their existence because they realized that the game had changed. And I knew that being in the locker room, a Black woman of a certain, you know, culture, there was a friendliness, you know, when I would go in the locker room. It wasn't, you know, I'm not a hoochie mama. I'm their sister. I'm the little sister to come in. They would talk to me. Buck Williams was really, I mean, I remember that like it was yesterday because, you know, back then you had to go into the locker room with all the nakedness and you're like, they're 6'8". Yeah. Anyway, I'm in the Buck Williams was like, sis, let me come over here. Wait for me over here. I'm gonna put my clothes on. We'll, And so I got an introduction into the power of being in the culture, talking to your nephews, your brothers, your big brothers about something. There's a different conversation. And we're seeing it. Stephen A's career is built on having access. So the game has changed inside and out. So the reporters now are being called to the carpet. You heard Deion call them to the carpet. Who said it? I know you said it. It's a different game. It's a completely different game on the other side, right? So newspapers, and magazines are going to have to make different choices about who they bring in. There's no Jamel Hill and all of these people that we see now emerging without this wink and nod between players and reporters, right? There's a different access.
Well, there's also still the NNPLA and a bunch of black newspapers. So, and there are black platforms and there are black spaces. And so with all due respect to Stephen A, Jamel Hill, with all due respect to Bomani Jones and everybody who made the way for them, including you and everybody else you name, and everybody who paved the way for you all in smaller numbers, the Sam Lacey's before, the Bill Rodens, this kind of thing.
Yes.
We've been talking and writing for a very long. I was thinking about that last night. And I'll talk about this in a minute. Sister who played a clip of the great Gil Noble, and I said, there's Gil Noble, and then there's everybody else in terms of television journalists. But many people don't even know that name. They've never read his autobiography, Black is Color, my TV tube. It's out of print. But she said, my mother recorded every Like It Is for decades. And I have them on these cassette tapes. And if I've heard that once, I've heard it a dozen times. People literally recorded on their VCRs or whatever, Like It Is. Gil Noble, by an order of magnitude, there's nobody, Brokaw, you name it. Gil Noble was better than all of them.
Charlie Rose, yes.
Charlie Rose, it doesn't matter. But I'm saying, when Deion Sanders says to them, y'all said it. I'm saying, really? Is that what they said in the Tri-State Defender? Is that what they said in the Amsterdam News? Is that what they said on the black websites? I mean, this crowd's a little bit better probably than the one that those black people that stuck those microphones in front of your face in Atlanta after South Carolina State put that booty whipping on you back at the Celebration Bowl. And by the way, that's the same South Carolina State team that Florida A&M beat like they stole something last weekend at the Orange Blossom Classic in Miami. So clearly, it wasn't that South Carolina State was that much better than Jackson State. But my point is this: when it's black reporters, you couldn't run that game. But now you're in front of the beast. Who said it? Who said it? What you mean? Who said it?
You're raising a couple of things, right? So there's a few things that are being broken, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about Sha'Carri. Also, it's like I want to talk to somebody who looks like me. Like the athletes and reporters. Actors and folk are changing, and recognizing that if you can write, it doesn't matter who you write for. I need you to understand who I am. I remember interviewing Denzel Washington. I asked him a question, and he was Denzel being Denzel. I was just talking to my students about this too, because 1,000 people talk to him. And I asked him a question, and I saw him lean back, and he said, "Where are you from?" And it was a moment where he was like, "Oh, this is not. Oh, this ain't that." Okay. And it shifted, right? Because he's like, "Oh, I'm not with a white leaning black person asking me these ridiculous questions. I'm with my kin, and it's something different. We having a different conversation." And that interview ended up going viral. But when I come into a space, I'm bringing the ancestors. Before I was just bringing.
You always had them, but
I had them, but I didn't know I had them. Now I'm coming in like I have a responsibility to the people 200 years ago to ask you some good questions. So it's a different game. I don't know. Now you got me thinking.
Somebody just said, and looking at both chats, the Nubia chat, the live YouTube chat, somebody just said, well, better competition, people elevate their game. Maybe that's true. And I think that's a great thing to consider in the governance formation. But what we're not going to do is play figments of the white imagination. We're simply not going to do that.
What does that mean?
I don't even know what it means. I'm just saying somebody brought it up, so let's talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Because, I think the idea is, first of all, somebody bring me the evidence that black people, rank and file black people, I'm talking about the 3 Negroes who dreamed forever of going to Harvard, I'm talking about rank and file black people. I need to see the evidence that those black folk in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s dreamed of their institutions disappearing and them joining white institutions. I need to see that. And anybody can bring it, please. And I'll bring you, for every one you bring, if you can find one, I'm going to bring you about 3 or 4, 5, 6, 700 or 1,000 examples of that not being the case. But it's about stories. You're a storyteller. You're a writer. You're a narrator. You teach people how to narrate. This is all about how we narrate the story. When we see Jack Robinson show up, we're not talking about the Kansas City Monarchs anymore. Everybody cheering for the damn Brooklyn Dodgers. When we see Bill Russell and them show up, we're not talking about the Harlem Wrens or any of that. No, we're talking now, or Harlem even Globetrotters, even though they weren't black owned at the time. We're talking about now the Boston Celtics. We don't talk about, in fact, the individual sports. When you bring up Sha'Carri, I mean, to see her and to catch that little hint of conversation between she and the Jamaican sisters, when Shelly Price said, "Oh yeah, Americans finally beat us," and they're like, "Yeah." She said, "It's because of you," and then they laughing. The white reporters are like, was that a beef? But then they start laughing. See, you don't even know nothing about this. You talking to Denzel is a different thing. Now, allowing folks in the social structure to overhear that, they're titillated by it because they never get a chance to hear us talking. But then that moment when he said, "Oh, where you from?" It's like, oh, this is who we are to each other. I'm going to have a conversation, and you and he taught them something, but that wasn't even the point. He was so relieved. It reminds me of that conversation he had with Desus and Mero. I played in my hip hop class.
Yes.
That's the first time I ever heard Denzel Washington talk about not only going to Fordham, but riding that bus and encountering the black spades. Why am I teaching in hip hop class? 50th anniversary of hip hop this year, so to speak, is because Africa Bambaataa, black spades to the Zulu Nation. Denzel was in school. He said, "I got to go across these zones." He said they had to cut the sleeves cut. If you know hip hop in the Bronx, if you know hip hop in New York, you know what it means, flying cut sleeves. You talking about the Savage Skulls, the black spades. Denzel Washington, because these guys from the Bronx. Now you're talking to two black guys, and you're talking about, I'm on the bus, I'm in the back, I got to take the bus from where I live down here to Fordham, and I'm riding across these zones where these gangs are, and the guy looks at me and says, "Nice shoes. What size are those?" And I was like, oh. Now black people are like, I've never heard Denzel Washington talk about that, because it was us with us, like you and him. And look, I'm sure because of Deion Sanders, there are going to be some black reporters that are hired. There are going to be some black people put on.
Like after the riots.
Of course. Now, it won't be social media because they shut his son down. But we're going to see the spectacle of Deion Sanders bring some black people. I was looking, one of my former classmates, he's a little bit behind me at Temple. Raylan Kaba is the director of the University of Colorado's new center. They have a center for, what is it called? Center for African and African American Studies. Very small percentage, I think 2.5% of people at, about 2.6% of the student body at the University of Colorado is black, at about 36,000 students. But they have a black culture center. Reminds me of Ohio State when I was there. The undergraduate student body was very small. There were, I think, percentage-wise, there were about as many graduate and professional students as there were black undergraduate students, and the graduation rate for black undergraduate students was abysmal at Ohio State at the time. But we had the Frank Hale Cultural Center. As you said, those black reporters that were hired in the wake of the uprisings and insurrections of the 60s kind of led to that handful of blacks who found their way into white media spaces, newspapers, television. The sister Dorothy Gilliam, trailblazer, if you get her autobiography. Dorothy Gilliam, who's still here in the DC area, former wife of Sam Gilliam, the artist, brilliant journalist. She wrote her memoir, Trailblazer, about this, among other things. But Cheney grad, Ed Bradley, so much, Max Robinson, of course, brother Randall Robinson. So you see that. Well, there's a parallel thing. We see it at universities. And at Ohio State University, we had a Frank Hale Black Cultural Center. I was the graduate assistant there for a number of years. My man, Larry Williamson, just retired as the director of the Frank Hale Black Cultural Center. But that cultural center came as a result of Ohio State that didn't have a great record on black folk, black faculty, black staff, black students. Now, they had the handful of Negroes who they led up. Jesse Owens went to Ohio State. Sure did. I went to school. I was in law school with his grandniece. Jesse Owens wasn't even allowed to stay on the campus of Ohio State University when he was winning those gold medals. So don't get cute, Ohio State. That's like Du Bois at the University of Pennsylvania. You see his name on everything now. They wouldn't even let him stay, him and Nina and the baby Burghardt stay on the campus. They had to live with the rest of the Negroes in the Seventh Ward when he was writing the Philadelphia Negro and getting it ready for publication. But in any rate, you see a similar thing in higher education. Very small numbers of black students at these plantation schools. Yeah, I'm a little fired up this morning. Let's do a little Deion Sanders channeling, same kind of take no prisoners approach, except we're going to do it for intellectual work. You know, running up and down the field is no great achievement. We've been doing that for quite a long time. But anyway, at Ohio State is very similar. We had a Black Culture Center, but the reason I'm bringing it up, and I'm coming back to the University of Colorado Center that just opened, is because Frank Hale, a giant. In fact, where's his memoir? I'm not going to get it. I've told y'all about that before. We've talked about it before. Angels Watching Over Me is the name of it. Frank Hale's memoir. Frank Hale had been the president of Oakwood College, the Seventh-day Adventist school, Oakwood College, of course, in Alabama. And Ohio State recruited him. They made him the vice provost for minority affairs, minority, so to speak. And Hale left Oakwood, came to Ohio State, set up something called the Black Graduate and Visitation Days. For decades, Frank Hale forced Ohio State, encouraged Ohio State, made Ohio State, convinced Ohio State, whatever language you want to use, to send for the top 5 students as selected by the faculty of every HBCU that joined this program. So 5 students from Tennessee State, 5 students from FAM, 5 students from Southern, 5 students, so forth. 5 students from Howard, Heavy. And those 5 students would come together for what they call the Black Graduate and Professional Visitation Days, the end of a week up through the weekend. And these students from all over the HBCU world would come to Ohio State, and they would apply to the college and school of their choice. And based on their grades, their test scores, but they'd already been pre-vetted. These are top 5. So Grambling sent its top 5. Alabama State sent its top 5, so forth. They would be given their choice of program to go to graduate or professional school. Frank Hale did that, a former HBCU college president from a Seventh-day Adventist, the Seventh-day Adventist HBCU, recruited by Ohio State to come and build that program. And that's how I ended up at Ohio State. As I've told y'all many times, my dear Jegnas, the great Jamie Coleman Williams and McDonald Williams, the head of the honors program at Tennessee State. Jamie Coleman Williams, first woman editor of the AME Church Review, was a moving force to help, among other things, Vashti McKenzie become bishop of the AME Church. So important, sister. Lived to be over 100 years old. We talked about it before. You can go in the archive and Knarrative and see our conversation about her. Very important sister. They had gone to Ohio State back in the 40s because, the Big Ten was known for that. HBCUs would graduate these students, but because most of our HBCUs are behind the cotton curtain, the states they were in would not allow them to go to graduate school there or professional school there. But the Pac-10, what used to be the Pac-10, it has collapsed now, right? USC, UCLA, whatever, Michigan, Ohio State, these places like University of Pittsburgh, even on the East Coast, some of these schools, Cornell, they would take those students because the southern states would say, you can't go to school in Florida, you can't go to school in Tennessee, you can't go to school in Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, but we will pay for you to go wherever else you want to go outside the South. And that's how they got degrees. So one of the main reasons I went to Ohio State, there were 2. One was the Williamses, and the other was Frank Hale and the Black Graduate and Professional Visitation Days. And I went up there, looked around, saw these other Black people who were in our bubble, our recruitment bubble. We made friends then, so I'm friends with many of those people to this day, and that's how I ended up at law school at Ohio State. And I'm raising that for this reason. These Black cultural centers, my man Fred Lee Howard edited a book on that, published by Third World Press, if you want to get it, on Black cultural centers. Fred Lee Howard, brother. I think about Chester Grundy for many years at the University of Kentucky. Chester's still out there swinging hard with both fists. He's retired now, but a beacon there. My man Lawrence, was it Young? At Penn State University, the Robeson Cultural Center. And there are a lot of folks in here, probably in both in the YouTube Live and in the Nubia chats, which are now soaring up past 2,000 here on this one. You all know, yeah, she is annoying as hell. I'm looking in the chat. Kay Kennedy, the LSU women's basketball coach. I said coach because I'm thinking about these Southerners, coach. But at any rate, Ole Miss paid for my father to go to FAMU. Oh, that's crazy. That's some interstate behind a cotton curtain business. Wow. Okay, but the point is this. This was not these schools doing this for the benefit of Black folk, because it did benefit us, the individuals who went and the communities they contributed to. It's also doing it, they picking up some cheap bargains. Think of it as recruiting. You had the best and the brightest from the HBCUs who went to these schools, even before Frank Hale showed up. But Frank Hale retired, and they named, but just before he retired, they named the Black Cultural Center the Frank Hale Center. So we had a center like that. And I said, you can read Fred Lee Hort's book on this. And we used to have the cultural centers, the cultural center directors, the Black Cultural Center directors would meet. And in some ways, they became many kind of spaces where Black students could convene. Well, now they've built one for the University of Colorado. And as I said, the founding director, who's been there about 20 years, Raylan Wakaba, scholar, like I say, he got his PhD in African Studies from Temple, good brother. And he's been fighting for 20 years to get it. And I saw in the announcement, this was February this year. Oh, wait, February. Yes, February this year, which is called Black History Month. But it reminded me because on the 9th of September, 1915, Wabash Avenue, Black YMCA, Chicago, Carter G. Woodson and his associates started the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. Today is the anniversary. We'll come back to that. Actually, that's good because we're talking about institutions, believe it or not. That's where we're going as we watch Prime run up and down the sideline with his swag and all this kind of things. Beautiful thing. Loving it. Loving it. Seen it before. Loving it. Now, if you were still in, the SWAC, I won't go so far as Brother Robinson down in Alabama said you ain't SWAC. I mean, you were SWAC by the time you were there. It's a beautiful thing. But it's a lot of colorful characters in coaching. I went to a school where they had Big John Merritt. We talked about this before about Deion Sanders. We talked about Eddie Robinson at Grambling. You could talk about Archie Gunslinger Cooley, who was Jerry Rice's quarterback at Mississippi Valley and then became a coach. I think he was Arkansas Pine Bluff. There's a lot had them big cowboy hats. If you know Pete Richardson, I'm thinking about people at Southern, the brother who's retiring now from South Carolina State. There's a lot of colorful characters in HBCU coaching. The Gaineses, I'm thinking about Clarence III, and of course, Clarence Big House Gaines and Winston State basketball. It's a lot of colorful characters. But when you come to the white space, this is titillating. This Negro is very interesting. Is he going to do a coaching version of what he did when he played for the Atlanta Braves and then played for the Atlanta Falcons and then played for the New York Yankees and got on a helicopter and came down, played in Cisco? Yeah, it's all spectacle. It's a beautiful thing. But the Cultural Center at University of Colorado, where 2.6% of the student body is Black, where there are about 36,000 students. In the state of Colorado, where there are only 2 out of close to 200 sports programs at the 11 or so schools that make up the kind of public education system in the university in the state of Colorado. There are only 2 programs. I ain't talking about 2 schools, 2 programs. Men and women's, whatever, sports. Only 2 programs that make a profit, that have made a profit over the years in Colorado. And that's the University of Colorado football program and the University of Colorado men's basketball program. Everybody else lose money. And so how can they still play sports? Because it's coming from the tuition, it's coming from the fees, it's coming from the money that is attracted. Like I said, how you going to get $31.8 million from the so-called Big 12 starting in 2024. At least that may go up. The University of Colorado gonna get that. Now, all that money's not going to football or go to athletic programs. So if you're playing lacrosse, if you're playing tennis, if you're playing the golf team, your scholarship gonna come in part from that TV money. And of course, we're gonna be watching, right? Because prime. Anyway, the point is this. It ain't going to Jackson State, or it ain't going to Metropolitan Community College in Denver, which had the only Black Studies program for many years in the state of Colorado. It damn sure wasn't the University of Colorado where Deion Sanders works, but they just opened in February a cultural center there. Raylan Rakaba is the director. Now they've had black faculty at the University of Colorado, very few of them over the years. I reached out to, some of the old heads who are now retired and said, what do you think about Coach Sanders? And one brother, I'm not going to say who it is because, he didn't tell me not to, but, I'm just, again, it's who we are to each other. Maybe we'll talk about it in Nubia. We'll come over to Nubia one night. Can I coax this professor to come over and maybe have a conversation? We'll see. It's like, I retired some years ago and I don't really go up there. So I don't really have any thoughts about it, and I'm thinking about that's the relationship of a lot of black faculty to these plantation schools. They're not really part of the culture. And so when I was looking at the photographs, from February, and I see Raylan, Dr. Rakaba, standing there, very proud. The chancellor of the Colorado system, University of Colorado system is there. The president of University of Colorado is there. And the first picture in the articles that I saw from out there is Raylan standing next to Deion Sanders. It's beautiful. Coach Sanders came over to support you, black man. Ain't nobody ever said he ain't. It's a beautiful thing. You hear him and Shannon Sharp talk, and it's like you sitting on Unc's front porch. It's a beautiful thing. Now, I said, okay, well, let me think about this then. Well, the chancellor of the University of Colorado system, Chancellor DePastano, pledged $1 million in matching private funds for support of this new cultural center. $1 million. It's all right. Colorado football in the year 2021-22 made $22 million in revenue. That was the year they went 4-8. That's before the 1-11 year last year. We're going to get $31.8 million in TV money. Probably going to go up. Mess around. Given that this is black labor, which is fueling this, I need somebody to explain to me the profit difference between that and enslavement. Beside the obvious, when we're free, we get to choose where to go, right? To school. The reason you got to get this boy out of HBCU football is that these Negroes might start going to HBCUs, and now we got a problem. But we can get him back over on this side. We ain't got to worry about these transfer portals. We ain't got to worry about this realignment. See, Jimmy the Greek was saying the quiet part out loud for the working class and the laboring class whites, because whiteness is the battle pay they got to protect the real villains of the piece. The real villains of the piece that the ones say, I'll give you $1 million for your culture center because I made 22 when we was losing. And that's before we jumped and went to the Big 12. Gonna make all the money. Now, let's go back a little bit. That was February they opened the culture center. A couple of months later, April, they had the spring game. Y'all know about the spring game, right? Spring football game. Everybody comes out. Tennessee State, they call it the blue and white game. I think Howard calls it the blue and white game because those are the school colors. People come out, festive time. This is where the team plays each other, offense versus defense. Sometimes you may have a little tailgate. Maybe you had a band come out, do a little thing. It's very nice. It's like when they do March Madness and midnight basketball. It's a beautiful thing. You come in the gym. It's like real school spirit. Well, Colorado was like, yeah, we got neon Deion. I think somebody asked more on this, why are Raylan Rakaba's books so obscenely expensive? Because they are published by academic presses like Lexington Books and places like that who really don't make no profit. And they're basically published for libraries. And it's unfortunate. That's why, as I have shifted and I'm working on a couple of things. This is why, again, the narrative and Nubia, this is why this is so important. The only time I even considered a white academic press was right after I finished my dissertation. And I was going to turn it into a book. And I, was in conversation just briefly with the University of Pennsylvania Press. I was still in Philly. That ain't going to happen again. My books, as I now turn more toward writing, I've written, articles, things like contributed book chapters, but single author books that will be coming out, I'm looking at black presses. It's got to be, because I'm not really looking for, somebody got to do it, right? And I won't be the first. There are others, but somebody has to make that statement, because we have to be able to do that. I'm on the board of a black publisher, my sister, Ayo Sakai, Dr. Ayo Sakai. And, we have our presses. Black Classic Press, Third World Press, Africa World Press. This has to be front and center. So Raylan's books are expensive because he's publishing them with these academic press, and they ain't really thinking about y'all. So anyway, yeah. So they opened the center in February this year. A couple months later, they had the spring game. Now spring game, you throw open the tail, you throw open the stadium. People come in, have a good time, bring your kids. Colorado was this shit. We got Neon Deion. We're gonna charge $10 a ticket. They sold out 42,277 fans. They made $343,000 in revenue. That's about a third of $1 million. A chance to in private. Well, he said private donations. I don't know. Then they made $122,000 in merchandise revenue. All y'all running to get these Colorado jerseys and sweatbands and brands on your cheek or whatever you're gonna do with it. Go Buffs. They made $122,000 at the spring game, y'all. And then just on the food, $143,000 in concession. At the end of the day, they cleared 200 stacks net profit. The Deion Sanders effect. Now, somewhere around here, I have the Sports Illustrated with Sanders and a couple of his players from Jackson State on the cover. And I'm sure there'll be another one soon with him on the front cover. Except this time, it's an ad for the University of Colorado in the Big 12. Why are we acting like we don't remember? It's almost like we're a race of children. But it's okay. It's okay. That's why we're here. That's why we're all doing this work, because it's not about not celebrating. It's about keeping your eye on the prize. We've been doing athletics a long time. The question is, how do it free us? I should pause here. Y'all remember Monet Davis? Professor Hunter, do you remember her?
Yeah, she was a world Little League World Series pitcher.
That's right. That's right.
We had hopes that she would go to I think she wanted to play basketball at an HBCU or Howard. Did she go to Howard?
Nope, she went to Hampton. Beautiful.
Hampton. I thought, I knew it was an H.
It was an H. She went to Hampton. Monet Davis didn't grow anymore. She was 5. She's the same 5 feet and 120 pounds, about the same size she was in Williamsport at the Little League World Series. But guess what? She got a softball scholarship. She played softball for Hampton. Let me just read from Wayne Coffey's article in today's New York Times. Davis wound up earning a softball scholarship at Hampton University and HBCU on the coast of Virginia, playing middle infield, studying journalism, and earning studying journalism, Professor Hunter.
Yes.
Come on now. And earning a degree in communications with a 3.67 grade point average. Opting to pursue graduate school. Let's talk, y'all. She was accepted into Columbia's sports management program and then applied for and won an HBCU fellowship that covers the full $125,000 cost of the 3-semester program. Scott Rosner, the program director, said Davis's Little League World Series pedigree and the fame that followed had, quote, zero to do with her acceptance. This is the article in today's New York Times, 9 years after Monet Mania. Still intrigued by sports. This child gonna be running your institution. Individuals don't beat institutions, y'all. We loved her when she was throwing the ball, but how many people have thought about her since? Well, we thinking about her today. Go ahead, Monet. Get your degree. She's up there studying broadcasting. But also she's the graduate school program she's been accepted to is sports management. So, Coach Sanders, you go ahead, baby. Maybe when Shadua graduates, maybe Monet Davis can be his agent or something. Because see, Monet understands. Because as a woman of African descent, let's say that she was still playing at the top of her game. What's she gonna play professional softball? Or if she played professional basketball, she's getting a pittance at the WNBA, which the NBA put together to run out of business, among other things, the ABL. If y'all remember that history, we talked about that a little bit. She's here, and of course, much of the article, though, see, the part I read to y'all, that's way down here. Way down here. Most of the story about her and her catcher, Scott Bandura, because Scott Bandura continued to grow. Scott Bandura was an all Ivy League slugger at Princeton, 6'4", 190-pound outfielder. This is the little boy who she was throwing to at the Little League World Series. Now, he just graduated from Princeton. He's an all Ivy League player. And he was drafted in the 7th round this summer by the San Francisco Giants and is thriving for the club's Class A affiliate in San Jose, California. Even in this, it's in the sports section, and it's talking about their relationship and all that. And you had to get all the way down here to see the HBCU stuff. Who are we to other people? Social structure. Who are we to each other? Governance. So now that we're updated on Monet Davis, let's return to the question. Colorado football this year, back in the spring, sold out season tickets for the first time in 27 years. So the Deion Sanders effect is really doing what it's supposed to do. I'm not mad at Deion. Deion is doing what he does, but let's be clear. One-on-one achievement allows us the fantasy of winning as a group. And it's a comfort. It's cathartic. It has some value. But how do it free us? Well, reminds me of Amiri Baraka. What did Amiri Baraka say? He said, put your money on the plate. Don't be late. And if you can't achieve as a group, it must be the devil. He said that was his poem, Dope. He said, dope. It must be the devil. It must be the devil. It can't be imperialism, can't be capitalism. It can't put your money in the plate. Don't be late. Don't be late. It can't be Rockefeller, because he gave Amos Pootbooty a scholarship to Behavior Modification University. And Genevieve Almost White works for his foundation. It must be Negroes. Can't be Mellon. He gave Winky Sucker as a fellowship to put his bank in charge of closing out the mortgages in the low-life Pittsburgh Hill Negro section. Can't be him. Can't be him. Put your money in the plate. In other words, if you don't achieve, and achievement, I mean absorption in the white institution, it must be the devil. It must be you. Can't be foundations, can't be the structure, can't be protecting. Professor Hunter, you brought up something about this Small Business Association and affirmative action.
Oh, yes.
What you think? I'm going to talk to us about that.
Ooh, I saw the Trojan horse of this Ed Bloom, because I was like, you don't spend 25 years trying to dismantle something if you don't have a bigger play. It was never really just about affirmative action. It was about all of it. All of the quote unquote set asides. We've seen since the overturn of affirmative action, Best Buy is being sued now by the same group because they have a management program earmarked for minorities, quote unquote minorities, Black and others, right? To elevate them within Best Buy. They're being sued. And now we're looking at all anybody that's doing anything that has any kind of DEI, you in a company, you have the potential of being sued by the same group. And now we're seeing the SBA, which the Small Business Administration, which has programs for particularly Black businesses, right? To get insights and resources, both financial and other. Now they're having to dismantle these programs because of the threat of lawsuits. And I was like, that was what it was designed to do all along. It was never about that redheaded young lady in Texas. It was never about this Asian at Harvard. It was always about not evening the playing field. They like starting on third base while we're outside looking in. This is going to backfire, though. Because it should backfire. It just shouldn't make you angry enough to because if we're paying attention, they need us. Just like this labor, you're talking about football. There's no football without Black people. If every Black person decides to take their ball and go home, the money stops tomorrow. We saw that with one team that said this president needs to, was it Mizzou? Was it Mizzou?
Oh, yeah. Concerned student 1950. And yeah, that's right.
Where they said the president has to resign, or we're sitting out?
Or we're transferring to North Carolina A&T.
And the president had to sit his ass down, right?
No question.
The power that these are college football players,
right?
You know, what does it look like across the board? What does it look like in corporate America? You and I know, you know where the labor is. If it happened at Amazon, if it happened in you name the company where UPS, we just saw that, right?
Right. That's right.
So
they had to settle that because the UPS slowdown stop everything.
If we wake the F up and realize that the labor that built this country is the labor that keeps this country going, from the longshoremen to the truckers. Shout out to you, mother truckers, to all of the folk, the bus drivers and the train conductors, to all you at Amtrak. You know who's making the thing do what it do. If we ever woke up, and I said this on the radio, I don't think we would ever have a bus boycott today, because people like their conveniences.
Oh, no question. No question. Just like the same way, that's exactly right. The conveniences are there. And we have to understand, these arrangements are going to change till we change them. What you're saying is so important. I mean, organized labor is really how we've been able to, in fact, we just passed Labor Day. We just got finished talking about it. The first Labor Day parade in New York was the people marching for an 8-hour workday. I was telling the students a week before Labor Day, I said, the reason you can say the word overtime is because labor organized, because there were no rules. You 12 years old, you can get up. Ruth Simmons, her memoir just came out. Former President of Brown, Simmons, who went to Prairie View, said, I'm not taking this when the A&M schools tried to bully her. Her memoir came out. I was 6 years old in the field, the cotton field. I was too little to walk. So they drugged me on the burlap sack, the 8-foot sack, and I would get off and pick cotton like everybody else. Miss Hamer said that when I got old enough to walk, the truck pulled up in Mississippi and I'm picking cotton. Understand that there were no rules. If you're old enough to stand up in the factory, if you're old enough to sew a shirt, you go to work. Labor forced capital by organizing to say you couldn't do it. Now on Labor Day, the money they paid us, we go back and give it to them on Labor Day sale. But what you said about Amazon, what you said about UPS, all of that is so very important, because what it really speaks to is the fact that the power of labor is in unity, in organizing.
Yes. And I think about, the Saudis coming, and I'm like, well, why do we need the Saudis? If we, and I just think about baseball and all of the players that the Negro leagues were thriving. And then they were like, well, let's let Jackie Robinson and the rest of them in. And then they weren't.
That's
right?
That's right.
Our neighborhoods were thriving.
That's right.
And then let's integrate. And then they're not. Our schools, you talk about this all the time. How many people started schools? How many people, I think about my mother going to Lucy Laney. To this day, they still have reunions. And
Come on now.
In their 80s now, they travel together, and their teachers used to be with them because they lived in a neighborhood. And that was how we built most of the things that we have right now, is through that community. And then it's Brown versus Board of Ed. Oh, let's send our children into harm's way, and because they get to sit next to their oppressor. And
we didn't make that decision. That decision was made it was a legal strategy from the 30s forward by a handful of black folks. And
we fostered that, though, without understanding that our ice water was cold enough, that all we needed were, superior books. The teachers were already superior, and then we undermined the whole teacher crew, right? So now all of the powerhouse teachers lost their jobs. It's like we need to strategize better and see what the landscape is. Jimmy the Greek tried to tell us, listen, if we give up that, then they got everything, because we can't compete with them. Basically is what he's saying. We can't compete if the playing field is even. And now they did this affirmative action overturn, and it's not going to be even anymore.
Not going to be even. And poor Jimmy the Greek, they fired him and then counted backwards from 10. Then struck Coach Sanders on the sideline of Colorado, put him with the great master of the Alabama plantation, Nick Saban, stuck a duck in, and they made their money. Jimmy, you were thinking too short, man. You were thinking short. We got this, bro. They can coach. They just can't own the place. Now, they almost had a little slave rebellion. Now, they was down there. The one boy with the afro got on his knees, and next thing you know, we thought they might have a rebellion, so we all got on our knees. Jerry Jones got on his knees. Everybody got on their knees. Okay, is it back? Okay. Now, boy, you ain't never going to play again in this league, because we run this league, you understand? Oh, wait, you got a black owner? Oh, Magic Johnson, he owns the Washington Commanders. No, they gave him the Jay-Z deal. We're going to give you a nickel's worth of ownership and stick you out in front of the press conference. In Jay-Z's case, they allowed him to put him in charge of closing out mortgages in the downtown Brooklyn. But anyway, I'm sorry. Shout out to the Ratner Center. But the point is this. The window dressing of individuals don't do nothing. Here we are these years later, which is really yesterday. And the rebellion was put down. So Colin Kaepernick Kaepernick Publishing, in collaboration with Haymarket Books. As I told you all, this is the most recent publication out of Kaepernick Publishing. Our history has always been contraband, edited by Colin Kaepernick and my friends Robin Kelly and Keonga Yamada Taylor. This is in defense of Black Studies. Now, I wouldn't call it Black Studies, as I told you all. It's not really Black Studies the way I look at it, but it is a useful compendium of primary documents like how we got here, the history they don't want you to know. Another section, part 3, how we fight back. Very important. And the preface is by Colin Kaepernick. He is not throwing a ball. He's not throwing a ball. He didn't throw a ball Thursday night. He's not the ancient cheesehead now slinging the rock for the New York Jets. He's not any of that. He's not generating any wealth for the NFL. And after they put down the slave rebellion, they made sure the head slave never got back on the plantation, even to pick a little cotton. Oh, by the way, today is also the anniversary in 1739 of the Stono Rebellion. The Stono Rebellion in South Carolina. But see, when you have the potential of a rebellion, you got to close that. So it's all fun and games when Deion Sanders run them down the damn field. It's all fun and games when he's, joking and wearing his chains and doing it. It's quite a different thing when you show up at a black school and start recruiting black athletes who should be going to the plantation schools. Oh, we got to stop this. It's fun. In one season, it's okay. We got a little spectacle. Now let's get together. Who gonna hire him? Because I'll be damned. These Negroes, we need them running up and down the field for us. It ain't even unique to have a black quarterback at Colorado. Of course, we all remember Cordell Stewart. So, I mean, come on, Eric Bieniemy, who still can't get a job being a head coach, but he was a hell of a runner for the Buffs. The point is this. It ain't unusual, as Tom Jones would say. It's not unusual to be loved by anyone. Meaning what? They love you, as long as you making that money for them. But let's talk about this in terms of this affirmative action case. It reveals the important thing, this case out of Tennessee. This white woman and all these people had already had resources, but you Negroes not about to get money that's for me. It isn't just money. The Tennessee case where they ruled, federal judge, district court judge, it'll be appealed, but it won't matter. That race is not enough when you're applying for this program, this small business program. You got to now write essays to demonstrate how race, quote, hindered your success. How exactly did race hinder your success? I'm black. That ain't enough? No, fool. It's not enough. Because you have to understand, let's just break this down a little bit. How many times have we said in this space, individuals don't beat institutions? They do not beat institutions. When you see one of us, the question we should be raising is, I don't care whether you're a head football coach, whether you're an individual on a faculty, whether you're first and only person on your job. When you see one of us, the question should be asked, how are the rest of us impacted? How does this help free more than one of us? See, big money funds the white nationalists, because they have made this money through the various criminal enterprises that allowed them to accumulate, quote unquote, wealth in this larger global capitalist scheme and in its local manifestations that we call countries, as if they're somehow separate from each other, which they're distinct from each other and separate in some ways, but in terms of the interlocking system, they are connected. Again, the Saudis understand that, which is why the Saudis applied for and got admission into the BRICS, now the BRICS +6, which is why the Saudis are buying golf and may buy basketball. And, at the end of the day, LeBron James is an employee. So they say, how much you making? We'll triple it. Oh, shit, I got to go play. I'm 100 years old, but I can dribble this ball up and down the field. Well, the Saudis buying. But see, part of buying sports is creating some fairly potent Lysol to disguise the real things going on. You're buying prestige. It's all about stories. It's all about narratives. And if you can craft the narrative, then you can come out as heroic. When you say, Professor Hunter, about Jackie Robinson and Negro Leagues, the Kansas City Monarchs were the class of the field. We ain't gonna go back through that. We've talked about that a million times, but let's be very clear. Then you wait a couple of generations and you make a movie and make Harrison Ford into Branch Rickey, and you forget that while Branch Rickey had some very noble ideas and noble intentions, he was also a businessman. And so now you ain't got to worry about the Negro Leagues. Clark Griffith, who owned the Washington Senators here in Washington, D.C., the motto of the Senators, the informal motto, and for people the white people in the city of Washington, was the Washington Senators, the Washington Senators. It said Washington, first in war, first in peace, and last in the National League. They didn't win no games. They played their home games in Griffith Stadium, which is right down there in the corner of Florida and Georgia, where Howard University Hospital is now. And then they would let the stadium be rented out for people who wanted to use it when they weren't there. Elijah Muhammad debated Mr. Michaud, Reverend Michaud, Louis Michaud's brother, there, Islam versus Christianity. Thousands of black people show up for the debate. In fact, Michaud's church is still across the street from Howard Hospital, across from where the stadium used to be. Then they played the Negro League All-Star game in Griffith Stadium. And thousands of black people sitting there in their Sunday clothes. Branch Rickey and them boys understood. We need this gate. We can get this market. And they got it. Now there's no more Philadelphia Stars. Now there's no more New York Elite Giants or Kansas City Monarchs. Now there's one Negro on the Brooklyn Dodgers. And then we'll add a couple more, Don Newcomb, and maybe we'll add a couple more, Roy Campanella. We might even win a world championship. What about the Negro League World Championship? Oh, them Negroes, Newark Elite, they out of business. But we got to, and then we'll wait a couple of generations and we'll tell a story about it. Again, narratives being important. We'll stick Chad Boseman and Jackie Robinson, and you Negroes will cheer Brooklyn, Brooklyn. We'll even get Jay-Z to make the theme song. Brooklyn, we go hard. I jack, I rob, I run. Yes, beautiful. I'm Jackie Robinson. Oh, Brooklyn, Brooklyn. Where Brooklyn at? Holland. But anyway, we won't even get into that. Point is this. Now you got heroic individuals, but individuals don't beat institutions. This affirmative action case reminds us. When you see one of us, how does it the rest of us impact it? Well, big money funds white nationalists who continue to make sure that the formation that this capitalist system was built on is never dislodged. And what is that formation, very basically? Well, you've got the criminal enterprise of private wealth built on the back of labor, and now private wealth just rakes in the profit from labor. So how do you combat that? How do you punctuate that? How do you break that? Well, you got to organize. And while you're organizing, if you're in a state formation, a country formation, it's government. Government has the power through its taxing power, through its control of resources. Government, when pushed by the people who live under or in or because of that government in the state formation, government can help balance some of this. Government, and then using law, government can enforce some basic redistribution. Now, you're in a place like the United States of America, there's enough redistribution to keep people from just burning up everything. But increasingly, even that is not enough for these white nationalists, these capitalists. Because these capitalists think that they own everything and it is their right, and government has no ability, well, it does have an ability, but it has no right to intervene. And they're going to stop you. This is the whole attack on voting rights. We didn't want nobody in there who could even raise these kind of things. If you go look at the Congressional Black Caucus in the 1970s and 80s and look at it now, people may have the same intent as the Mickey Lelands. People may have the same intent as the Ron Dellums and the Shirley Chisholms. People may have the same intent as the Adam Clayton Powells. People may have the same intent, but this system has so rewarded private wealth, criminal wealth, that buys politicians that even the voices like a Summer Lee, even the voices like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez find themselves confronting this wall of private money, this wall, and so much so they even got to prop up somebody like Nancy Pelosi. You know why Nancy Pelosi running for Congress again? She loves her job. That's going to be the story they tell you in the newspapers. What they also going to mention way down is that she's still the biggest fundraiser in the Democratic Party. Please understand that it ain't because she can sit in the back with her friends and talk and, hey, Hakeem got that. Hakeem need Nancy Pelosi, not to tell him how to guide the maze of policy. Hakeem need Nancy Pelosi because Pelosi pick up the phone, she can put $1 million on your books. And it's a little better when she's in the Congress than when she's not. Now, y'all done already hit her husband in the head with a hammer, but he's recovering nicely. So she ain't got to go back over there and take care of him on the West Coast. Her people on the East Coast anyway, Baltimore, Nancy Pelosi, a fundraiser. But why is that important? Because in contemporary politics, it's the money. And this is the same money that was behind the lawsuit. We're going to come back to that in a minute. But let's understand, if you don't break the back of wealth unless you're organized, and as you're organizing, you have to fight to use the government as an apparatus to help break some of this up so that you can get a little bit back of what you pay in. Your taxes, whether it be sales taxes, income tax, however you put it, all of these resources can be used to push back against this private wealth. But private wealth understands how this works. Government creates an apparatus to have some potential of redistributing some of this wealth. Law can be a mechanism for redistribution, hence the affirmative action program. You black, okay, we're going to give you a little bit of a leg up. Small business administration. But these attacks are aimed at protecting the wealthy. I'm talking about the really wealthy, not the millionaires. I'm talking about the big money people. They're aimed at protecting the wealthy from that redistribution possibility. Now, these are the people who will be sitting up in the skyboxes today at Colorado versus Nebraska. And when Deion Sanders overthrows the receiver, or Travis Henry drops a pass, that's when you might hear the N-word. I'm sorry, up there where you can't go. I mean, they don't even let you serve up there. But this is the people who drop the money to watch the entertainment. Their great grandfathers were the ones on the plantation that took the two biggest Negroes and they said, y'all fight each other barefisted, and I'm gonna put some money down on the fact that my Negro can whip your Negro. The kind of contemporary version of that is called the Big Ten or Pac-12. Anyway, I'm sorry. But every once in a while, one of them Negroes might sneak off and tell the boys to come suit up for Jackson State. Oh, we gotta get this Negro back on the plantation. Why? Because I'm in my skybox. I funded the affirmative action challenge. I funded all this stuff. And let's talk about who brought that case in Tennessee. An organization called the lawyers were arguing, they were paid by they come from the Center for Individual Rights. Who are they? Their organization, and I encourage everybody, if you want to find out about foundations and where the money comes from, when you read an article and they say, oh, the lawyers that argued the Tennessee case came from the Center for Individual Rights, you can go to Influence Watch. influencewatch.org. Look up all the companies, the nonprofits, so-called nonprofits. Don't mean they ain't got money. It's a status. And you can see who pays them. Well, who pays the Center for Individual Rights? Well, they get regular donations from the Sarah Scaife Foundation. We know who Sarah Scaife is. Sarah Scaife was the niece of Andrew Mellon. Andrew Mellon was Secretary of the Treasury. For those of you who take your history through fiction and narratives, not with a K, but narratives like stories, then you may remember Boardwalk Empire. You remember that, Professor? You ever watch Boardwalk Empire?
That's one of my favorites.
Remember Mellon? Remember when Nucky Thompson goes to the private club and he gonna make the deal with Mellon to do the bootleg stuff, right? This the same Andrew Mellon whose niece funds the place that funded the Center for Individual Rights. We got this money. You're not getting our money. And remember, this guy, even in Boardwalk Empire, Mellon's a thug.
Yes.
He's a thug. He didn't believe in the income tax. He didn't bring in prohibition. What the hell? It's a child's version of morality. This man is an interloper. This is Andrew Mellon. Now, on the other side, they have something called the Andrew Mellon Foundation. Many of my friends and colleagues beg for coin from the Andrew Mellon Foundation. And one time, they even had a Negro head. And there's a Negro head of the Ford Foundation right now. Okay, so the individual, how do it free us? We're going to give y'all 10,000, 100,000, 150,000, 15,000, 25,000, 300,000 for humanities projects and social science projects aimed at creating a better world. Yeah, $300,000, that's a lot of money. They made that at the spring game at the University of Colorado because everybody want to see Coach Prime. When we going to see what's going on? Come on. They made that at the spring game for $10 a piece, not even counting concessions, not even counting swag. But you take $300,000 from the Mellon Foundation to fund some study where you can look at the humanities and social sciences is a lot of money. Meanwhile, the same Mellon family, the niece of Andrew Mellon, gives regular grants, annual grants to the Center for Individual Rights, and they playing the long game. They're going to make sure the government don't mess up their private money. Who else? Oh, by the way, the Mellon, it ain't even the niece. It's the niece's son. That's Richard Mellon Scaife. Y'all know he one of the arch right-wing funders. They gave money, right? Smaller grants, he says. Don't give a big endowment. Give smaller grants annually over long periods of time. So the Center for Individual Rights going to get that check year after year after year after year. Here we are in Narrative. Here we are in Nubia. If all of us, if so many of us, and there's a lot of us now, and it keeps growing, give a little. Now we got a foundation, another foundation. This is the anniversary of the founding of the Association for the Study of Afro-American Life and History, African American Life and History, then Negro Life and History, 1915. Carter Woodson applied for a few grants. This is when them guys were still alive, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies. And he says, the Phelps Stokes Fund. And then they say, okay, we may give you $100, we may give you $1,000, we may give you $500 grant, but we want to see this in the report. We want to see you do this kind of research. Eventually, Woodson says, I ain't applying for no more grants. And he told Du Bois and them, if you take their money, he's gonna try to tell you what to do. And you know what he did? He turned around to the churches, to the segregated schools, the teachers, to the communities, to the families. He had them boys, them young boys, like my man that wrote his journal, Lorenzo. Let me slow down here. Not Lorenzo Dow Turner. It'll come to me in a minute. Who did the 2 volumes journal on selling Black history and working for Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history, where he's writing about how they would drive through the South selling Carter Woodson's books, selling the books from the Associated Publishers. How did Woodson build that association? On the nickels and dimes and dollars of regular Black folk. How are we building this foundation? On the nickels and dimes and dollars of regular folk. And guess what? Regardless of wherever else money comes from, what we do is, when we do that, we've built self-determination. This isn't a criminal enterprise like how they built their money. Thank you, Lorenzo Green. Lorenzo Johnson Green, the Negro in New England. Thank you very much. Thank you, President. She reminded me. Lorenzo Green. Lorenzo Johnson Green. Yes, right. One of Woodson's boys, as they called them. And so we have to understand that, very important. This affirmative action case, this argued by the Center for Individual Rights, just like Ed Bloom and them funded the Supreme Court challenges, or the challenges that made them to the Supreme Court to end affirmative action in higher education, which was step 1 toward the real objective, as you say, Professor Hunter, which is to shut all of this stuff down. SCAIF, what else? Gives money to the American Enterprise Institution, American Enterprise Institute, you know, the criminal enterprise there. Also, one of the early funders of the Federalist Society. Heard of them? Yes, we have. Judicial Watch, another one. Who else gave money? F.W. Kirby Foundation, the Lynd and Larry Bradley Foundation. See, these are, when you go to Influence Watch, you can see where the money is coming from. It's very important. In fact, they had another lawsuit. There was a lawsuit from a professor who was at the University of Pittsburgh, who was removed from a leadership position on campus because he had written this article, published this article critical of affirmative action. Who's on the board of the Center for Individual Rights? They'll tell you at the Influence Watch, at influencewatch.org. You got James Pearson, who's the president of the William Simon Foundation, the chair of Donors Trust. He's on the Manhattan Institute. He's a senior fellow there. The Pinkerton Foundation, the TWS Foundation. Asa here used to do this all the time. Asa will bring us in a room and he will walk us through the issues of the day, and then he would say, where the money coming from for the legal challenges? Where the money coming from the curriculum fight? Where's the money come for the newspaper article? This, or who owns this? And then we would go through the foundations. Understand, the foundation. Small cannot compete with large that has more and dedicated resources and departments to procure public resources, to defend themselves, to manage administrative tasks. So if you got a small business, you can't compete with the larger businesses because you don't have a whole staff dedicated to the paperwork. You got to do the paperwork. Half the time, and I don't say no to nobody, which is probably a character flaw. I don't know. But the point is this. I ain't got no staff. Professor Hunter's doing what she's doing, Knarrative and Nubia and a million other things. That's her. You get a little bit of help. You know, we get some more resources, we get some help. But if you're a small business, you don't have resources. So here come the big boys. He said, why y'all busting their chops? They're small businesses. And ain't the point of busting their chops because they're small business. We're busting their chops so they never become big businesses. Deion Sanders.
Yes.
Deion Sanders goes to Jackson State. Jackson State is no competition for the University for Ole Miss. Tennessee State, my alma mater, went up to South Bend, Indiana, to play Notre Dame, got beat like 56-3. People say, why they do that? They wrote a check. They flew in everybody. They got new turf at the practice facility in Nashville. I'm gritting my teeth because Tennessee State was known. I wouldn't call them this, but my man Dwight Lewis in his book, A Will to Win, said, you know, for years, for decades, Tennessee State was an independent. Wasn't in the MEAC, wasn't in the SWAC. They called Tennessee because, you remember, before they went to Big Ten, Notre Dame was independent. They called Tennessee A&I, Tennessee State, the Notre Dame of black college sports. Okay, I don't like comparing to white, but I understand why you said it. No longer, because those were the times when Tennessee State would have beat the tar out of Notre Dame. But now them boys, Golden Tate, one of the great receivers in the history of Tennessee State University. You know where his son was a great receiver? Notre Dame. My point is, integration meant I'll take all them fast Negroes and your 2 4.0s. Rest of you niggas go to hell. That's what integration meant. Jimmy the Greek needed to just update his thing. Once they get the coaches, what do we have? We'll have the institution, Chief. Do you understand? It's all labor. And you think you can organize the coaches? We're going to show you with the Rooney Rule. We don't give a damn how organized you are. Until the labor strikes, we ain't hiring no Negro coaches. And we know y'all got some great Negro coaches, even got some great Negro coaches at white schools. Ask Tyrone Willingham how impressive Deion Sanders is. Come on, y'all. Let's be serious, as Obinga would say. This ain't the first time we've seen this. Tyrone Willingham was the black coach at Notre Dame at for a time. My point is this. They are defending the institutions. Institutions don't be individuals. Jackson State was no threat yet, but they could see where this was going. So you got to shut the small businesses down before they become competition. You better shut them HBCUs down before we messing around and it's Grambling playing Jackson State for the national championship. And we sitting at University of Alabama like, what the hell happened? They all went to Alabama A&M, Alabama State. Hell, I even heard Talladega got a team. Yeah, Talladega, that would be the school that Deion Sanders got his college degree from. Anyway, my point is this. You ain't understanding. Wait, he played for Florida State. Yeah, he played for Florida State. Point is this. These schools are hella afraid that you're going to mess up their criminal enterprise. They're plantation-based athletic programs. They ain't got no problem with you entertaining. Now, they may have a problem with you making some money off the entertainment, hence shutting down Deion Sanders' son without a social media. But they got a problem with you entertaining long as they get the money that you had $31.8 million from the contract. This was negotiated before Neon Deion shows up, before Coach Prime shows up. You know how many Coach Prime jerseys they gonna move if they sold $142,000? $130,000 of merchandise at the spring game. You know how many children gonna be running around here with Coach Prime shirts on? Black children who can't afford that shirt. You know how many of them would have been wearing Jackson State paraphernalia had he stayed there? But guess what? I'm glad that he did what he did. I'm glad he spent the time at Jackson State. And I wish him well wherever he goes. But I also know, as an educator, the impact in a society where we don't slow down long enough to think about anything. The impact of individuals who are then used as proxies for institutions. We didn't win anything. Some bragging rights, feeling a little bit better. Meanwhile, they in the back room count money like, what else? We got to keep this race narrative going. Okay, at the next press conference, when Nebraska beats them, or when they beat Nebraska, if Nebraska beats them, I want this reporter to ask this and get him mad. If he beats Nebraska, I want this reporter to ask this and get him mad. Why? Because as long as people watching, the circus has now moved to Boulder. Give me my theme music. Money, 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 money. See, the band should learn that. Some people really need it. Do things, good thing with it. Let them play that. Now, Colorado band want to play money, 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 money. Let them play that. But don't play Here I Go. Because Here I Go is like, at this point, it's a minstrel song. Here I go. Now, what? And when you see that 90-year-old Colorado grandmother who has used the N-word like it flows from her, like baby's breath. When you see her in the stand, here I go. Here I go. And then you're going to be like, don't get mad. That's called cultural appropriation. And guess who paved the way for it? All the Negroes cheering. Why? Don't get mad now. You mad? Why don't you go play for the black school? Oh, y'all did that. Oh, yeah. See, don't put your faith in flawed champions. Because, see, it's one thing when it's one-on-one. Let's talk about this for a minute. Because individuals don't beat institutions. We have to stop talking about liberation as an individual exercise, because it's easier as an individual exercise. They've had some black people who cut out some space to operate ever since we've been in oppressive systems. Oh, hell, I mean, you want to get biblical about it, and I stay out of the Bible, Reverend Wright, you know that. Because see, I love Jeremiah Wright. I do with my whole heart. That's my Bob, and I hate to get chastised by him. So I ain't no preacher, and I ain't about to try to be no preacher. And plus, that man's an intellectual on top of everything. So I was about to say, Joseph cut out some space to operate in Kemet. Well, actually, it didn't. Stop. Don't say it. John Henry Clark said, don't read the Bible as a history book. But metaphorically, Joseph comes into Egypt and rises through the ranks. Individuals, they can do that. Sent for the fam. But it gets to a point where this oppression got to end. And it took them 400 years, according to that narrative. And then we got to walk out of here. Deion Sanders was going one dude, and they was like, oh, we got to shut this down. But let's think about that. Individuals don't beat institutions. Liberation, if we're going to think about it as a collective exercise, we got to think about it as achievable by more of us, by all of us, by creating a we, about transferring resources. This past week, and now that we're back in school, a lot of the momentum of what we talk about on Saturdays, I generate, because to me it's seamless through the week. And so Tuesday afternoon, I spent a little time down at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. If you're around the DC area, I encourage you all to go down there. On the third floor of the Smithsonian American Art Museum, there's an exhibit featuring some contemporary artists, non-white artists. And one of them is the great Arthur Jafa, artist of African descent from Mississippi, Howard University student of the great Haile Gerima. He did cinematography on Daughters of the Dust. Never seen Daughters of the Dust, please. What a movie, what a film, the great Julie Dash. Arthur Jafa did a short film, about 7.5 minutes, a few years ago, called Love is the Message is Death. And in that film, it's 7.5 minutes. He got a Kanye West track playing underneath it. And it's just a series of images, all of which he sourced publicly, things you can find out there. Barack Obama standing up at the funeral for several of the Charleston Nine. Remember, he's standing there in front of the bishops of the AME Church. You see Vashti McKenzie over his shoulder. I was sitting in New York at I just come out of a bookstore. I'm looking through the books. I'm sitting eating a turkey burger, sitting down there near NYU watching the funeral. And Obama got up. Amazing grace. They started getting up behind him. It's a beautiful moment. Beautiful moment. So Jafa plays a little bit of that. And then he goes on to the next image. So you see all these images of black people all over. You see the civil rights kids in Birmingham marching like this, and they start marching. Then you see some young people from Ferguson. Then you see Miles Davis. You see Mahalia Jackson. All of it as the music is playing. And then the sister comes on and says, black people, we are not aliens. And you put, we are not aliens. And then you see, you mentioned him, Prof. ODB, Beckham catching this one-handed thing back. We're like, well, maybe they are aliens. Then you got a clip from Alien where you see the alien coming. It's all images designed to kind of stimulate. So I asked my aesthetics class, I said, is there a possibility of a grammar of Africana? That's what that conceptual category framework is. We're trying to come up with a grammar. In other words, a common point of reference where we can engage in the essential work of Africana studies, which is why I say this isn't Africana studies. This is kind of about race. I mean, it's great, but not Africana studies. Translation and recovery. In other words, can we be in conversation with ourselves over the millennia and bring that forward as we recover some momentum of memory and apply it to problem solving in the contemporary moment, envisioning? So we're working through that in the aesthetics class, because ostensibly you would do that by learning languages, immersing yourselves in cultural moments. What Arthur Jafa is doing, Jafa, Arthur Jafa, is using images to try to tap into some common sensibility. And in the film, there's a young sister that comes on for about 6 seconds, and she says, what would America be like if we loved black people as much as we love black culture? And then it goes back into the images, right? And you see the fire hoses, and you see Walter Scott getting shot in North Charleston by that punk cop in the back. And you see this sister getting stopped on the side of the road by these two funky police to tell her to get out and walk backward toward the car with her hands up. And she says, what are you doing? What are you doing? He said, my babies are in the car. And you see this little boy get out on the passenger side of the highway, walking back. And she says, you're terrorizing my children. Then it comes to the next image after image. So this is the kind of film, 7.5 minutes. It will make you weep. It'll make you smile and laugh. Love is the message. The message is death. What if America? What would America be like if we loved black people as much as we love black culture. Give me my theme music. Money, 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 money. Here's $1 million. We're going to pledge $1 million for your Black Cultural Center. It's nice. Hey, how much we make for that Big 12 concert? Oh, 31.8 million. Okay. And we made a profit last year. We're going to pledge $1 million for your funky little center with 2.5% of the student body being Black. How many of them Negroes run up and down the field for the various programs at the University of Colorado athletic programs? But race is the oldest trope in the distraction. Now, during segregation, that meant something a little differently, right? But every movie, every story, you got heroic Negroes, magical Negroes, as they're often called in filmmaking. Jack Roosevelt Robinson, played by Chadwick Boseman in 42. Not the Negro Leagues, but the Brooklyn Dodgers. The Little Rock Nine. I was talking with a young brother who's an archivist, works now at the Moreland Spring Art Collection at Howard. I was introduced to the brother, and he asked me, I asked him, where you from? He said, Little Rock. I said, oh, so you know then that it's not about Little Rock Central High School. It's about Dunbar and Horace Mann. He said, my mama went to Dunbar. I love in my Education in Black America class, I have the students do an assignment, and I ask them, find out where your grandparents now went to school, or even your parents, but especially your grandparents, because now it's basically their grandparents' era. When I hear the names of the great Black high schools of Richmond and Atlanta, when I hear Booker T. Washington of Atlanta, when I hear, Maggie Lena Walker in Virginia, Robert Russell Moton, when I hear, the great high schools of Chicago, of New Orleans, and all the various Dunbars start coming out. Yeah, but the movie about the Little Rock Nine, like they just dropped out of sky with learning, reading, write, and got spit on by white people, and that's really the story. The story ain't Jerry Jones. He can go to hell. The story is Dunbar High School and Horace Mann High School. Race is the oldest trope. When we come to sports, our achievements become a proxy. Individual achievement becomes a proxy for the rest of us. We love Sha'Carri, and I love even better when you say, go, with all them sisters running down. Beautiful Black women, and then one win, and they all embrace. And you hear a little bit because they got a mic close, and the Jamaican sisters and the sister from the United States talking. Why? Because they sisters. That's governance. That's who we are to each other. Here come the white commentator. What are they talking about? Let me turn this damn volume down, because you have nothing to say about this. I don't give a damn whether you get it or don't get it. It's not personal. Why? Because we're having this conversation in English, and I'm still mad about it. Because even your language is in my mouth. And Ngugi wa Thiong'o talks about this. We haven't even recovered the ability to have a conversation with ourselves without y'all coming in here and injecting yourself and reinforcing the hierarchy, even with the best of intentions. I don't care whether it's the Mellon Foundation on the left or Mellon Scaife on the right. You're injecting yourself into a conversation that ultimately, in diminishing us, diminishes you, because the African contribution to humanity has something to say to the world that requires us to be like, turn down the noise. But we can't. Why? Because every time we say turn down the noise, here come a magical Negro talking about give me my theme music. And thousands of cheering white folk in Boulder, Colorado today will enjoy the spectacle that they've been enjoying since we got off the boat. And they get to reap the benefits, continuing labor. Now, let's think about that, though. If it's Jesse Owens in 1936 winning gold medals, we cheer for that brother. And then Dorian Harewood plays him years later in the Jesse Owens story, and then they make the movie again in terms of a race, right? Race. If it's Joe Louis, the Brown bomber from Alabama, raised in Detroit, coming up, beating up Max Schnelling, AJ got a picture, Arthur Jafer got a still kind of moment when Joe Louis knocking somebody out. Then he sees Ali ducking people, right? And Kanye's got this kind of soundtrack, and you see it. It's like you're thrilling to it. Then you see somebody else get punched in the face. Then you see somebody else take an L. Love is the message. The message is death. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar changing his name, standing there with them brothers behind Muhammad Ali, inspiring a generation to go Muslim. In fact, I spent yesterday evening with this brilliant sister, Suad Abdul Kabir. She's written a book called Muslim Cool. We were in conversation with her. Shout out to Dr. Nisa Muhammad, Howard University Chapel, Muslim Student Association. It's a beautiful thing. She has made a compelling case for how Islam and hip hop are not only intertwined, you can't understand hip hop without Islam. And it was true. We were in conversation. We were just talking about all the examples. She goes through all the examples. The 5%ers. I mean, you start talking about the best MCs back when we was younger, back in the 80s and late 70s, early 80s. Through it, a lot of them cats 5%ers. And she says because language is at the center of 5%er work. You got to be in the cipher and develop your language skills. So when you hear Rakim, when you hear Big Daddy Kane, when you hear Poor Righteous Teachers or Brand Nubian, these are 5%ers. She's talking about the Nation of Islam. It's so important. It was just brilliant in hearing her in conversation. And in thinking about that, we think about this idea of how Kareem, because of Ali, and then Ahmad Rashad, Bobby Moore, whatever his name was before, now he's Ahmad Rashad. I mean, they go into Islam. It's like, this is a problem. We got to break Ali. See, it's harder to break Ali, though, although you try to use the law to do that. Why? Because he's in an individual sport, just like Joe Louis, just like Jesse Owens, unlike Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but just like Venus Williams and Serena Williams and our sister Coco Gauff, who's going to finish the job. Coco Gauff going to finish that job this weekend at the United States Open. We know how we felt when we saw Venus and Serena. And watching Coco Gauff at Arthur Ashe Stadium sends an important message. But we must never forget, reaching back for Althea Gibson, that Althea Gibson was trained by black folk, that young girl out of Harlem that came down to Virginia and went other places. They were black tennis associations. Now there are networks to help black people, but they call it inner city. They call it helping the disadvantaged. Ain't what we called it before. When you integrate into a place that doesn't see you as human, they say everything we doing for you is charity. We don't need no damn charity. All we need is what Freddie Douglass said. What does the Negro want? Leave us alone. In my law school class, we were reading a book last week, this week, and next week called Repair. Catherine Frankie's book, Repair. You've heard me mention it. And last week, we talked about the Sea Islands of South Carolina, the 40 acres and a mule promise of General Sherman, the famous Field Order 15. But what a lot of people don't know is that field order, and Mike Harriet actually wrote about this this week, I think, or last week. He was talking about Field Order 15. And he quoted Henry Louis Gates. But of course, you could also quote Willie Lee Rose, Rehearsal for Reconstruction, Yankee Stepfather, which is William McFeely's book, and the great Vincent Harding, There is a River. And go to those primary documents and understand that the idea of land for black people in South Carolina was not Sherman's idea. It was not Rufus Sexton's idea. It was not the idea of Philbrick or Pierce or any of those guys that went down there to help the Negro, but also help themselves. And not the Yankee stepfather, Oliver Otis Howard. But they had a meeting with black people in South Carolina. And they said, what do y'all want? They said, land. What else do you want? Land. And they said, well, okay, do you want the land to be distributed among the whites? You want it mixed up, black and white, so you can kind of be integrated into society? You know what those people said? Those black South Carolinians who had come out of enslavement, this 1861, 1862, the Civil War is raging. You know what they said? They said, no. One of the brothers said, there's a hard feeling in this land among the whites for the blacks. And so it will be for years to come. We want land and leave us alone. We're going to live together. You think Jackson State was about upgrading the facilities and some turf? No, that was a declaration of self-determination. And them white boys said, we got to stop this slave rebellion. If you think that Deion Sanders at the University of Colorado is about black progress, well, I know you don't. We just like to watch black people win. And that's important individually, but it's not a proxy for group advancement. Now, Sanders, with his broad vision and ebullient spirit and love of the Lord, he heard his cry and pitied every moan. I ain't mad at him. Maybe he think he can flip the whole University of Colorado. Hell, if he can, I'll be the first one to say, dude, your vision is eclipsed mine. I can't even. That's brilliant. Now, maybe that's where it's going. Who knows? Because nobody knows the future. But I know the momentum of memory suggests otherwise. And so, when you see Simone Biles, it's an individual sport. But don't forget that they treat Simone Biles the way they treated Surya Bonley, the West African sister who went to France and then was the ice skater that was beyond everybody else. In Surya Bonley's case, they wouldn't even give her credit. She did a whole backflip. They downgraded her. Why? Because can't nobody else do it. In Simone Biles' case, remember, they used to go to a perfect 10. They took the cap off, and now they give you points above just based on your difficulty. But Simone Biles is so bad that they don't give her even the full point she should get for things only she can do, because they said we don't want the other gymnasts trying to do what you do and break their neck. The first time I read that, I was like, I wasn't stunned. I was like, okay, this is the problem. She's still gonna win, but we ain't gonna give you the super stick things. For number one, you're gonna put it so far, can't none of us ever get it. And number two, one of these girls gonna try to do it and break their neck. So they're gonna penalize her. But you know what I'm saying? And I thought about it and I said, this ain't the first time they did that child from West Africa that way. They did Surya Bounty like that. She out there looking like smooth black velvet on that ice. Backflip. They was like downgrade. Why? Because the law, they use the law as a weapon. We go to law school to use it as a weapon. And then we come back and realize you keep changing the rules. Affirmative action, funky little excuse for reparations, still not for everybody. And you come after the small businesses. Why? Because you know small business can become big businesses. You don't need nobody fomenting the rebellion, whether it be Jackson, Tennessee, or Nashville, Tennessee, or Jackson, Mississippi. What you don't want to happen is somebody give the blueprint for using the government, using organizing and the law to break the back of monopoly capital, and we make a little progress. Because we don't have a country. We are not the Saudis. Those of us who are on the continent, Africa, the continent of Africa, whether it be Nigeria, whether it be Mali or Niger, where these coups are taking place, they making moves to scare the United States. You know, the United States just pushed for and they accepted the G20 is now in India. They're in India right now. They just offered membership to the African Union. Why are they doing that? Because China out here like, we're going to build something else. You know who's not at the G20 in India? Xi Jinping of China. And of course, Vladimir Putin. He can't travel because they didn't put the case on him from the International Criminal Court. But the point is this: the United States nervous now. Joe Biden just asked the World Bank to release billions of dollars in aid to these countries. What is aid? Aid is the way to keep you on the titty. You gotta have a little aid, whether it be aid in terms of the World Bank giving money or grant in aid in terms of getting ball players in Boulder. You've got to keep these people in a system where we run it. It's very important to understand. So when we see an individual triumph in sports, whether as a player or a coach, it gives us a warm feeling because it reminds us of the possibilities of blackness. And that's okay for the people who run the place as long as they get to be in control. It's very important. Race is the oldest trope. It's the oldest trope. But I tell you what, as Obenga used to say, you can't build a pyramid by dreaming. You don't build institutions by continuing to do that, because ultimately that means you're going to keep begging them, and completely make progress. So I'm gonna wide toward end now. This Africana Studies framework that we have been working on now for almost 20 years, that we're now using, and those of you who are not yet in Nubia, let y'all know in Knarrative, you know, we're going to start the next iteration of the Introduction to Africana Studies class. It's based on translation and recovery. We have to be able to be in conversation with each other. One of the things my law students brought up last week, brilliantly, we were reading the book, we're having conversation. The name of the book is Repair. And I asked them, is there a difference between repair and reparations? Now, these are Black lawyers in training. So they're thinking with the language of the law. They're thinking like contract lawyers, for example. One of your brothers was like, I think the difference between repair and reparations, repair presumes wholeness that you're trying to restore. In other words, there's a whole self. You're trying to restore the self. Reparations is something that is owed. So I said, okay, so there are at least two parties, right? And if you do contracts law, you know the first thing they teach you in law is about contracts is that there's offer, acceptance, and consideration. So there's at least two parties involved in a contract. Multiple parties, but at least two. Well, then that presumes the wholeness of one of them. And you're now gonna, so in many ways, what we're talking about reparations, we're talking about restitution, a check or resources. But repair, meaning being made whole, there's a dimension of that you can do for yourself. Can't nobody pay you into your humanity. Can't nobody compensate you into your humanity. Doesn't mean they don't owe you. Doesn't mean it's important. But when you see a figure, like we're going to take these historically Black colleges and not only put them on the level of the white schools, but restore a level of competitive autonomy and excellence, which we've always had and had before Jim Crow, with all the problems we had as well. Because what we're fighting for to end segregation was to get resources. I said to use the law as a weapon to intervene to get our resources. And what you then were able to bend it into a narrative was we wanted to be with you. You better go read that history. And in that distinction, we see the roots of the Africana Studies framework. Africana Studies, the act of studying Africana on our terms, with our language, with our momentum of memory, with our grammar, with our ability to create methodology, comes at this moment that we were required to repair ourselves, not to get something from somebody else. And the jailbreak moment, as we've talked about many times in that Africana Studies framework, was when we were arguing back in the early aughts, when we were creating the Philadelphia curriculum framework, the curriculum framework that became the Africana Studies framework. And we were around the table, and the brother Daoud Malik Watts, brilliant brother whose daughter now is the managing director of the Thurgood Marshall Center at Howard University, brilliant civil rights mind in her own right, Billy Wilkerson. But her father, who was professor for some years at Dillard back down in New Orleans, Daoud Malik Watts. Daoud wanted to do this lesson on the Book of Negroes, that book that after the British and the people from the United States had the fight, they met in New York to settle the terms of the British leaving, because they came back in 1812, but story for another day. And the British had this book of black people who they're going to take with them, either to Sierra Leone or really re-enslaved the Caribbean or Canada, with names, occupations. And Daoud was like, this shows us that they weren't just labor. They weren't just enslaved people. They were human beings, because they got their names, what they did. And at that moment, it clicked for me. We need a framework that says who we are to other people and who we are to each other. Who Deion Sanders is at the University of Colorado with a cash cow. Who he is to us is a brother, a son, a father, a member of our community. Both things are true. But an Africana Studies framework allows us to separate them so that as we debate the meaning of this moment, we can talk about it in a governance formation. You come people from social structure. Well, I think we don't care what you think. We know what you think. We've seen all your movies. We've seen all your documentaries. I saw Ken Burns tell, what's the white boy that created Sarah Palin, help creator? Steve, the commentator. Now he's an anti-Trumper. And people acting like we don't remember that you paved the way for Trump with know-nothing politicians running for highest office in the country with Sarah Palin. Steve, anyway, it'll come to me. Somebody put it in the chat. Ken Burns, the great documentary filmmaker, said, I believe that the second most important, anyway, I'm going to see, because I got the chats up. I'm about to close out now. So let me see. Can I pull up the chat for YouTube? I got the Nubia chat here. Let's see. Here we go. Ken Burns said the most important event in the history of humanity is the birth of Jesus Christ. Can anybody tell us what Ken Burns told this man the second most important event in world history was? Let's see. I'm waiting. Steve Schmidt. Thank you, Easy. Schmidt, thank you. Narrative folk in here, Easy in here. That's on the YouTube, and people are putting in the chat too. Steve Schmidt, right? Remember Woody Harrelson played him, or plays in that movie they made, Sarah Palin, right? You acting like we don't remember that you had a hand in creating Sarah Palin, and then they make a movie where they act like he was conflicted about it. Y'all be telling these stories like we wasn't paying attention. What was it? Kay Kennedy quoting Boots, Riley and the crew. Capitalism is like a spider. The web is getting tighter. I'm struggling like a fighter. Yes, not yet free. Where the coup comes in with that sample from Ice Cube, from a Bird in the Hand. Blacks are too effing broke to be Republican. Yeah, that's right. Boots Riley. Steve Schmidt, that's him. Yes, that's right. S. Green said it first in the Nubia chat. He said the second most. That's right, Ibrahim. Y'all saw it in the YouTube chat. He said the second most important event in the history of the world, behind the birth of Christ, was the founding of the United States of America. I ain't mad at Ken Burns. I love Ken Burns. Ken Burns, to me, should be studied for how you weaponize memory. Because he sprinkles Negroes in every documentary he makes. I don't care whether it's Thomas Jefferson or jazz. I don't care whether it's baseball or the great national parks. I don't care whether it's the Holocaust or his latest one that's coming out. Forget what the subject is. He was talking to Steve Smith about it. But anyway, when he said that, I had to stop the video. I just started laughing. I love it. The man understands what he's fighting for. Now, of course, that's patently absurd, but It's not to him. It's a social structure conversation. So we're having a conversation. You can't be allowed to come in. Jackie Robinson, he did the Jackie Robinson one too. You can't be allowed to come in and weigh in on what we're talking about. Yes, Karen, that's right. Lawrence Hill did the novel on it. Somebody Knows My Name. Then they made it into a miniseries. It aired on BET. What's our sister from Mississippi?
Ingenue Ellis.
The great Ingenue Ellis. No question. Played in that. That's right. That was the Book of Negroes. Who we are to each other. So the Africana Studies framework, we're having that conversation, and that was the jailbreak moment. When Daoud put together that lesson for the Book of Negroes, and we sitting around there arguing about how to do it, when he said that, it's boom, we got to have something that shows us who we are to each other and who we are to other people. And the other categories, the ones where we revisit them when we come back into this intro class. Wait, what are our ways of knowing? How do we use science and technology? How to create cultural meaning in any given moment in time? And then how do we pass that on from generation to generation to generation? Movement and memory. One of the things that I really, really love and admire about Muslim Cool, Dr. Kabir's book, is that she spent all this time in Chicago and New York. She's from Brooklyn. Spent all this time with young Muslims, then went around parts of Africa, then came back having conversation with Muslims. And you see how all of this is influenced. One young brother asked her last night about drill music. And she said, Lil Durk, they told me listen to Lil Durk. My teeth hurt because I'm from a generation where, what does it say? But I'm trying to listen. Remember, we talked about the Ballad of the Bullet and drill music. The idea is that even they are trying to grapple with this question of how do I be in the world? And I brought up last night the recent song Rick Ross and Busta Rhymes, Master Fard Muhammad. And I said, damn, that is Islam in it. And I'm like, but these guys talking about, and then I went back and listened to it again late last night. I'm like, yeah, this is it takes morphing over generation to generation, what the momentum of memory, what that cultural meaning making applied over time as you pass it down, movement and memory, what that allows you to do is fortify your governance formations. But it takes study. There's no quick way to do it.
Right.
There's no YouTube shorts. There's no TikTok, like we were talking about in office hours. There's no quick thing. It's slow accretive work. This is why Aryique Armand's book, The Resolutionaries, is so important. I said Kathy Adams is doing the mission, and then Aya and Elliot started reading it. And I went back and pulled mine off the shelf and started rereading. And I'm like, it's a reminder. We do not come into our memory as what others say about us, but what we say about ourselves. And we got to figure out how to do that.
Yeah. There's so many things I wrote down. First of all, we have to challenge our institutions to get off the titty. Because as long as you are getting your milk from a source that is poisoning the rest of us, we can never be free. So I want, and y'all know who you are. You're taking money. With that money comes a responsibility to keep us quiet and to keep us in our place. You're taking the money to silence Black people, period, full stop. You're on the titty. Get off the titty and trust Black people. Number one. Number two, the reading piece that you said, and someone knows my name. I read the book before the movie came out. Yes. I read the book because that's all I knew the book was. So when I saw Book of Negroes, I was like, what kind of title is that? It's called Someone Knows My Name, because the book was so powerful. But I'm also having this discussion with myself and my class about not just reading, because reading is not a destination. People think, well, I finished this many books, but it's like the Bible, how you got to keep coming back to it as you grow, right? And you've discovered things about yourself as you grow in all of the books that you read, So I done read Toni Morrison's Beloved 3 times, coming into a 4th time now, because I've changed as a person. And I see different things every time I open that book. I'm reading different books very slowly because I need to, test myself. And then I know I'm gonna come back to it. It's not about I read 100 books this year.
No,
that's not the goal. The goal is I need to read this book so that I can be a better person, or I'm reading these books to become a better person. I'm going back to the 4 Agreements. The Alchemist can be read several times at different stages of your life. So when people ask you for book lists, you're going to drop a lot of books like you did today. But it's you said, and was it in office hours? It's about your interests. It's about who you are as a person. It's about your development. And the goal should be to take these breadcrumbs and find yourself. It's not you don't look, no one's going to do that work for you to become to
right.
become. That becoming is on you.
That's
And I feel like we don't pick up that mat. We're looking for, whether it's in church, the pastor to give you the way, or whether it's, or imam or whatever.
That's right. That's right.
We're looking for our teachers. We're looking for, the savior complex, whether it's Beyonce or Taylor Swift or whatever, whoever you praying to right now.
Woo,
I
come
just
on
feel
now.
like we don't do that work, and we need everyone to do that work to be whole as a people.
That's right.
We need everyone to come whole. So that's the brick thing. And finally, cultural appropriation, because you mentioned it. And I caught something on the Twitters, which I'm going to forever call it. I just want to share it with you. I want your thoughts really quickly. Let me call this up. This is not it. It's right here. Okay. Let me share. All right, I'm going to play this, Dr. Carr. I'm going to play this. All right, that's enough.
Do you know that fraternity or their organization?
No, I don't. But they don't know us apparently.
I mean, it's consistent, right? I mean, it's consistent. I mean,
so the biggest genre of music right now is K-pop.
Mm-hmm.
Which clearly there's no K-pop without the Jackson 5, New Edition. We can go on. I'm not even gonna get into NSYNC, which wouldn't happen without Black folk. I had a student this week. We were talking because I assigned them the 1619 Wesley Lowry music piece because I thought that would be a nice entry point for all of them. I got a nice note from one of my students, a little young Black male, who said he played it. He and his mom cleaned the house on Saturday together, listening to it. And then she gave him more, and he said it was such a beautiful experience. So he thanked me for assigning that, which was the goal. And then I had another student said she was, everyone knows, but and she's not. Doesn't have a whole lot of melanin. I'll say that. She said, well, everyone knows Black people, are the foundation of all music. Wow. And I said, everyone, you think everyone knows that? She said, yeah, everyone knows that. Wow. And I said, no, everyone doesn't know that. The same K-pop people that call you out your name and disrespect your culture are using that very culture to build a multi-billion-dollar industry. And Black kids love K-pop too. I got so many Black students that love them some K-pop.
Oh yeah.
And I'm looking at these fraternities and sororities and all they do is borrow from us and then give us their ass to kiss. I'm saying
that's the problem. Yeah,
enough of that. So
enough of that. I mean, they're able to walk around and do those moves because they have legs and toes and hands and arms, and that is a gift from Africans. I mean, obviously, so who they are, we gave them, and so they just happened so long ago they don't remember. The language they're using, the capacity for language, of course, we gave them. So it's not. This is just the latest iteration of doing what we've already been doing. I mean, what did Thelonious Monk say? It's attributed to him anyway. He said, well, are you afraid of people stealing your music? He said, by the time that they get to what I'm doing, I'm gonna be doing something else.
Period.
I mean,
but there's a responsibility on us to, first of all, to hold one another accountable. And I struggle with this, right? Because I had a discussion with our brother Dante Stewart around Deion this week, and we love him. Shouting in the fire. And he former played at Clemson, and we were having that conversation. And he's like, Deion is Black. He brought that Black culture, and I was like, hold up. And some people are like pushing back because I'm like, that's not Black culture. Like, we get to define what Black culture is. We have allowed them to regurgitate our culture back to us, and then we eat the vomit and then call it Black culture. Nah, that's not. No. We show up in many different ways. Gold chains and Louis Vuitton bags, not Black culture. I will fight you. Fight you.
No question.
So.
No question. And I remember reading his book, and I love the fact that these folk are fighting. That's one thing I like about Suad's book. What she's not gonna allow. In fact, she says my Islam includes everybody. the nation, the Sunnis, the Shia, the Sufis, and the people will fight. No, it's all black. And she opens the book with a sister who wears she got a chapter here, she calls it a hood job instead of hijab. I said, we used to call them Gucci Muslims in Philly, because these sisters will take the hijab and do all kinds. They'll have it tied up like you. And in Islam, they'll say, that's not the right way. Black women say, hey, back up. So the
Is my hair covered?
Yes. Is my hair covered? Right. That's all you need to know, right? So the sister had on, she had her joint in camouflage. And the Pakistani girl was like, oh, I like that. Where'd you get that? She said, no. I'm wearing this because I make it look good, but I'm also wearing this because my brother served and was overseas. And so it's kind of a tribute to this kind of thing. Like you said, there's no one way to do black culture. And I remember reaching in the fire, one of the things that I'm consistently, I don't get distracted by is the fact that in order to be in these social structure spaces, the white publishers, the idea of blackness as some form of perpetual response to trauma that's what sells, because it makes us traumatic. We're damaged. We're not repaired. So I remember when I picked it up book first time, I'm saying, why you gotta be in the fire all the time? I guess you shouting in the fire because it's fire. So you know what? I'm gonna sit by the river. And so I ain't shouting about the fire. But what she says in here is that our lives are not lived to be a response to the trauma all the time. We respond to trauma when we have to. And so, I think about that in terms of here, Monet Davis getting ready to go to Columbia. And I was reading another article in today's paper about Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton just was made a full professor at Columbia. She's co-teaching a course with the dean over there called Inside the Situation Room. They charge $65,000 a year for this graduate program. They had like 800 people applied to be in this class. They took about half of them, and they had to be screened by the Secret Service. And week after week, she's going to talk about being in the Situation Room, being a Secretary of State, before that, being a senator, all this kind of thing, being in the White House with her husband. And I'm saying to myself, our institutions have to have that level of engagement. Now, Monet Davis is going to be up at Columbia. She could probably go sit in and audit that class. A sister we know from her sports is saying, now I need something else because of where I'm going with this. So, but what we have to understand finally is that statecraft for people of African descent in the United States is not something that we often think about, because we're too busy trying to figure out how we're either going to survive in or plead with these people or shout at these people for inclusion in this framework, and this framework getting ready to collapse. The white nationalists have said either we're going to rule it or we're going to ruin it.
Yep.
The other countries have already moved in another direction, and they finally getting some momentum to break away. And we're over here talking about how our trauma makes us the most American of the Americans, how our contributions make us the most American. Hey, turn that noise down. Turn it down. Now, we'll be interested, though, to see today, Prof. And I guess I will peek at it because I want to see how.
I'm watching, and then I'm watching Coco Golf. Today I'm going to have Joy.
What time Coco go?
They said TBD, so I'm just going to keep.
TBD?
Yeah, because, Madison Keys, that come from behind loss was painful, but she it went into the wee hours, so I guess
that's what the white girl Coco beat the other night complained. No, Coco said, wait, she had time to rest. It was one of those situations where
they had a terrorist, not terrorist, some sort of protest that stopped the match for like an hour. The cops had to come. People had concreted, put glue on their feet to the concrete. It's a whole lot of mess going on, folks, with the Nazi stuff. Like the U.S. Open is a festival this year. Apparently, somebody said it smelled like Snoop Dogg's living room the first couple of nights.
That's everywhere now that they've legalized it and the people making money off it.
Can y'all do edibles so none of the rest of us have to get contact high? I'm just asking for a friend. Can y'all do the edibles and drink the tea and let the smoke go someplace else, please?
They don't do
that.
What was the shout out to our brother Philip? Is it Tiafoe or how you say it?
Tiafoe? I think it's Tiafoe. Francis Tiafoe.
Yeah. Who because he's from this area. Well, people continental African, because he was right there.
And Shelton as well, whose daddy coaches him.
Shelton,
Brian Shelton is his dad, who was won with Georgia Tech's women's team. He was a coach for them, and he coaches his son as well. Brent.
Okay.
yeah.
I mean,
So,
this is the season. We used to always, it's close to the Ethiopian and the Egyptian, of course, because Ethiopian New Year, and we used to always. This is the season. I mean, we always have a season. When Tiger was young and doing his thing, it was the Masters and Venus and Serena. So Coco is sliding right in there. We hear the young girl coming back. She done had the baby. She's coming back, right? The Haitian Japanese.
Naomi Osaka. I don't know if she's coming back, and I
don't care, right?
I don't. I really.
I thought I read something about her. She said she was coming back, but yeah, it's important to understand. We have to understand that the world goes on, you know, and we have to be part of the world. We can't get trapped in this thing.
Yes.
For those of you who are maybe in from Morocco, who have family over there, we know it's, you know, I guess past 600 people made transition. Unfortunately, they had a huge earthquake over there.
Oh wow.
So yeah, y'all be and I see there in Jersey, Tahisha Way is now the lieutenant governor. She was secretary of state, but I didn't realize we must have been in Kemet when Sheila Oliver, she passed away.
Oh yes, she made transition. That was devastating.
Well, apparently this sister was one of her apprentices.
Yes. And she was good. She did the thing that we ask everyone to do, you know, groom your successor.
That's a good place for us to stop. Yeah, because that's what happened, right? She worked for her.
Yes. Groom your successor. You ain't gonna live forever. Hi, Nancy Pelosi. I know she raises funds, but at some point, you know, pass the baton. Damn, pass the baton while your fingers aren't racked with arthritis. Pass it. Pass the baton.
Pass the baton.
Working on mine as we speak. I love you.
I love you.
Love everybody. See y'all in them Nubian streets with Dr. Senyata, Dr. Carr on Monday.
Dr. Senyata can make a tea like that. Wait a minute,
I know she can. I know she. More edibles, less smoke.
Less smoke.
All right. Love you, Dr. Carr.
Love you too, Bob. See you later.